The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes, but it cut my salary in half and changed how I understood power forever. Your compensation will be reduced by 50%, my boss said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table, effective immediately. No preface, no apology, no build-up. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap, and looked at him. On what basis he didn't hesitate. You're damaging the company's healthy culture. That phrase landed harder than the number. Healthy culture. As if it were something fragile I had cracked just by speaking. I'm Maren Whitaker, 46 years old. Operations compliance manager at a logistics firm headquartered in Minneapolis. I had been with the company long enough to know when a decision had already been made somewhere else. Sarah from Human Resources sat to his left. She didn't look at me. Her pen hovered over a blank notepad like she was waiting for something to write down, but not yet. This is disciplinary, I asked. It's corrective, my boss replied quickly. A necessary adjustment. Is there a written warning? A performance plan, I asked. No, Sarah said, finally lifting her eyes. Not at this time. I nodded once. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice stayed even, understood. Both of them relaxed, just slightly. They thought that was it. I picked up the paper. It listed my name, my title, and a new salary number written in bold. No explanation. No reference to policy. No signatures beyond his. I set it back down. Can you show me which company policy allows you to reduce my salary like this? The silence was immediate and complete. My boss leaned back in his chair. Sarah's pen stopped moving altogether. It's about behavior, he said after a moment. About alignment. That's not what I asked. I asked which policy. No one answered. Sarah cleared her throat. We can follow up? I'd appreciate that, I said. The meeting ended without anyone officially ending it. Chairs scraped. Papers were gathered. My boss avoided my eyes as he stood. As I walked out, I already knew two things: my pay had been cut for defending someone who couldn't protect herself. And no one in that room could explain how they were allowed to do it. That mattered more than they realized. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revengeaita. While the characters and events are imagined, the situations are inspired by real workplace dynamics, faced by professionals who choose integrity over silence. This story explores how power is often misused behind closed doors, and what happens when someone refuses to look away. The first time I realized this was coming had nothing to do with my salary. It started 3 weeks earlier, in a smaller room, with a younger voice shaking across the table. Evelyn missed the verification step. Sarah from HR said, tapping a printed memo. That puts the delay on her. Evelyn Park sat beside me, shoulders tight, hands clenched together. Junior analyst, 18 months in, smart, careful. Still learning how to breathe in meetings like this. That's not accurate, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. My boss glanced at me. Maren, let HR finish. She did finish, I said, and she's wrong. Sarah frowned. The audit log shows the verification wasn't completed. It shows the verification tool failed to sync. I replied. I emailed IT about it 2 weeks before the incident. The ticket number is in my follow-up. I slid my laptop forward and turned the screen toward them. Timestamps, error reports, a process gap. Not a person, Evelyn whispered. I followed the checklist. I know, I said, without looking at her. Sarah exhaled. Even so, we need accountability. You're asking for a signature, I said, picking up the memo. This says Evelyn was negligent. She wasn't. My boss leaned back. Maren, we need to show we're addressing issues. We are, I said, by fixing the system that caused it. Silence stretched. Then Sarah said, it would help if you were more aligned. With what? I asked. The facts or the narrative? My boss's jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I slid the memo back across the table. Unsigned. I won't put my name on something that isn't true. Sarah's tone cooled. Noted. The meeting ended quickly after that. Evelyn followed me into the hallway, eyes glossy. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to. This isn't on you, I said. Go back to your desk. She hesitated. Are you going to be okay? I watched Sarah disappear around the corner with the memo tucked under her arm. I did my job, I said. We'll see how they take that. By the end of the day, the disciplinary action was dropped. No apology, no correction. Just quiet compliance. And a shift I felt but couldn't yet name. The shift didn't come with an announcement. It came quietly, like a door closing somewhere behind me. 2 meetings disappeared from my calendar without explanation. When I asked my boss about it, he didn't look up from his screen. "We're streamlining," he said. "Too many voices slow things down." I was responsible for those reviews. I said, "You'll get the notes afterward." I didn't. What I got instead was feedback, delivered casually in the hallway. "You're coming off rigid lately," he said, as if we were discussing weather. "Not very aligned." "Aligned with what?" I asked. He smiled. Then, "The direction leadership is taking." The word leadership had started to do a lot of work. A week later, I was called into his office. No HR this time, just him. Arms folded. "I need you to be more of a team player," he said. "I am," I replied. "I just don't confuse agreement with accuracy." His expression hardened. "That right there, that tone." "My tone," I said, evenly, "or my position." "You challenge decisions in front of people," he said. "It undermines confidence." "Which decisions?" I asked. "The ones that were wrong." He stood up, signaling the conversation was nearing its limit. "This isn't about right or wrong. It's about culture." I let that sit. "So performance no longer matters." He shook his head. "Performance matters, but culture comes first." "Then define it," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, culture just replaced accountability." He didn't answer. He opened his door instead. After that, messages came through other people. Instructions filtered down without context. Decisions arrived finished, with my role reduced to execution. Ryan from planning caught up with me by the elevators. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm doing my job," I said. He hesitated. "They're saying you push back too much." "I push back when something's wrong." He nodded once. "That's what I thought." By the end of the week, I understood the pattern. Facts were tolerated. Resistance was not. And the word culture had become the cleanest way to say comply. The first place I felt the cut wasn't in my pride. It was in my calendar. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my laptop open, recalculating everything I had already committed to. Mortgage, insurance, the automatic transfers I had set up years ago when stability felt permanent. I didn't curse or slam anything shut. I just adjusted numbers until they balanced again, even if the margins were suddenly thin. The next morning, I ran into my boss near the elevators. He nodded like nothing had changed. "You doing okay?" he asked. "I'm working," I said. "That's good," he replied. "Let's keep things professional." They already were. That was the problem. By mid-morning, I drafted an email. No adjectives, no accusations, just facts. Per our meeting, I wrote, "I am requesting the company policy that authorizes a reduction in base salary without prior documentation, progressive discipline, or notice. Please advise." I read it twice before sending. Then I added Sarah from HR and the internal compliance archive. Not to threaten, to record. Her response came 2 hours later. "Thank you for reaching out, Marin," she wrote. "We understand this situation may feel difficult. Leadership decisions are made in alignment with company values and culture." I stared at the screen. I replied immediately. I didn't ask about values. I asked for the policy. There was no answer that afternoon. Ryan stopped by my desk near the end of the day. "You okay?" he asked again. "I will be," I said. He lowered his voice. "They're saying you should have just let it go." "I don't let false records exist," I said. "Especially when they affect someone else." He nodded once, then left without another word. That evening, my phone buzzed. An email from Sarah. "We are reviewing the relevant documentation and will follow up. No attachment, no reference, no policy, just time." I closed my laptop and sat still for a moment. They had taken half my pay, but they were still avoiding the one thing I had asked for. And the longer they delayed, the clearer it became that the answer wasn't complicated. It didn't exist. He called me into his office late that afternoon. Door already closed when I arrived. "I just read your email," he said, holding his phone like it had personally offended him. "You're making this adversarial." "I'm documenting," I said, "not attacking." He shook his head. "You didn't need to involve compliance." "I asked for a policy," I replied. "That's where policies live." "This could have been a conversation," he said. "It was," I said. "You ended it." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You're turning a corrective step into a legal issue." "You already did," I said. When you changed my pay, his jaw tightened. You're not listening, I said. You're saying this is about culture. I'm asking how culture authorizes a salary reduction without documentation. He stood, signaling the meeting was nearing its limit. This is exactly the behavior I'm talking about. Clarity? I asked. Resistance, he said. I opened my laptop. Then help me understand. I drafted a second email while he watched, my fingers steady on the keys. Please provide the official company policies governing salary adjustment, disciplinary action, and corrective measures. I read aloud as I typed, including any approvals required and effective dates. He exhaled sharply. This isn't necessary. Then it will be easy to answer, I said. I added Sarah from HR again, then the compliance archive. Then I hit send. The room went quiet. You know this puts people on edge, he said. Accuracy does that sometimes, I replied. He didn't respond. He opened the door instead. By the time I got back to my desk, my inbox was already buzzing. A short message from Sarah. We've received your request and will review the relevant materials. No timeline, no attachments. Ryan walked past and paused. Everything okay? I asked for a policy. I said. He nodded slowly. That explains the mood upstairs. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep things collaborative. I didn't reply. The record already was. Once a system is asked to explain itself in writing, it can no longer hide behind tone. The delay was the answer before anyone admitted it. 2 days passed, then 3. HR stopped responding altogether. When Sarah finally asked to meet, her email was careful, almost polite in a way it hadn't been before. Just a quick check-in, she wrote, to clarify a few things. The room was smaller this time, no boss. Just Sarah and a man I hadn't met before, introduced as Mark from internal compliance. He didn't shake my hand. He opened a folder. We're reviewing the documentation related to your compensation adjustment, Sarah said. I know, I replied. That's what I asked for. Mark cleared his throat. We've been unable to locate a standard policy that authorizes an immediate salary reduction without prior disciplinary steps. Sarah didn't look at him. It may have been applied as a discretionary measure. By whom? I asked. She hesitated. By leadership, so not by policy. I said. Mark glanced up. That's correct. The room shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. Authority wasn't sitting where it used to. Sarah folded her hands. We're still gathering context. I've provided all of mine. I said emails, performance records, my refusal to sign a disciplinary memo that misrepresented the facts. Mark nodded once. We've reviewed those. And, I added, there was no approval chain for the pay change. He didn't contradict me. Sarah finally met my eyes. This review will take some time. That's fine, I said. My pay was cut in minutes. Silence settled again. Heavier now, not defensive, cautious. As I stood to leave, Sarah spoke quickly. We ask that you remain professional during this process. I have, I said, consistently. Outside the room, I saw my boss watching from the end of the hall. He didn't approach. He didn't wave. He turned away. By the end of the day, meetings were quietly rescheduled, decisions slowed. Emails started including extra names. Nothing had been fixed yet, but something had cracked. They hadn't found a policy because there wasn't one. And once that became part of the record, everything else had to be reconsidered. He caught me just before lunch, standing a little too close, voice lowered like we were sharing a secret. Can we talk, he said. Not a question. A request that expected compliance. We went into a small room near the break area. No calendar invite. No HR. I think this has gone further than it needed to, he said. We can fix it. How? I asked. He rubbed his hands together. I can reverse the pay change. Effective next cycle. We'll call it a misunderstanding. In writing, I said. He paused. There's no need to formalize it. There is, I said. The decision was formal. The correction should be too. His tone sharpened. You're making this harder. I didn't make it, I replied. I asked how it was allowed. He leaned back. Do you really want this on record? It could affect relationships? Mine already has, I said. He tried again. Softer this time. We'll restore your pay. No one needs to know the details. HR needs to know. I said, compliance needs to know. He shook his head. That invites scrutiny. It already exists, I said. You invited it when you cut my salary without policy. Silence stretched between us. He looked past me, calculating. Think about it, he said. We can keep this clean. Clean isn't quiet, I said. Clean is correct. He stood abruptly. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help yourself, I said, and kept my voice steady. Those are different things. When I left the room, my inbox chimed. An email from Sarah, brief and careful. HR will be expanding the scope of the review. It read, additional documentation may be requested. I forwarded it to compliance without comment. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep this constructive. I didn't reply. The record was already speaking, and it didn't need my permission to keep going. The review stopped being theoretical the moment people from outside our building joined the call. This is Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations, the woman said, voice steady. We'll be walking through the decision timeline. Sarah from HR was already there, so was Mark from Compliance. My boss joined last, camera on, expression carefully neutral. Patricia didn't waste time. We're looking at a compensation reduction executed without documented discipline. Who authorized it? My boss spoke first. I did. Under which policy? Patricia asked. He hesitated. It was a corrective measure aligned with culture. That's not a policy, Mark said quietly. Patricia nodded. We've audited the documentation chain. There's no prior warning, no performance plan, no approval record. Sarah shifted in her chair. We're acknowledging a procedural gap. It's not a gap, Patricia said. It's a violation. No one interrupted her, she continued. The company was exposed to unnecessary risk. Wage adjustment without process creates liability. Retaliation concerns were also flagged. My boss leaned forward. That was never the intent. Intent doesn't override procedure, Patricia said. Outcome matters. She turned to me. Marin, your performance reviews show consistent compliance leadership. There's no record supporting corrective action. I asked for policy. I said, that's all. Patricia nodded once. And that's why we're here. The call ended abruptly after that. No small talk. No reassurance. Within hours, meetings were paused across the department. Approval requests stalled. Emails started copying people I had never seen included before. Later that afternoon, Sarah stopped by my desk. Her voice was lower than usual. The review confirmed the compensation change was not authorized, she said. We're preparing formal remediation and accountability, I said. She didn't argue. When I looked up, my boss was standing across the floor, watching as Patricia spoke with Mark near the elevators. He didn't approach me. He didn't need to. The system was finally doing what it was designed to do, and it was no longer listening to him. The email arrived at 9:12 in the morning. No subject line drama, just a calendar invite titled Compensation Review Outcome. Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations was already on the call when I joined. Sarah sat beside her, posture formal. Mark from Compliance nodded once in greeting. My boss joined last, face tight, eyes fixed somewhere off-screen. Patricia spoke first. We've concluded the review. She paused, letting the words settle. The salary reduction implemented against Marin Whitaker did not follow company procedure. There was no documented discipline, no approval chain, and no policy basis. Sarah took over. Effective immediately. Marin's compensation will be restored in full, retroactive to the date of reduction. I exhaled slowly, not relief. Release. Additionally, Patricia said, all related notations in Marin's personnel record will be removed. There will be no disciplinary reference associated with this action. I nodded once. Thank you. Patricia turned to my boss. Your authority to make compensation and disciplinary decisions is suspended pending further training and oversight. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Understood, he said finally. Sarah added, a formal notice will be issued documenting the procedural violation and corrective steps. Silence followed, not awkward, final. After the call ended, Sarah stopped by my desk with a printed letter. This confirms the restoration and record correction, she said. Her voice was professional again, careful in a different way. Thank you, I said. Ryan appeared a few minutes later, eyes wide. It's official, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. Across the floor. My boss packed a folder into his bag. He didn't look up when he passed. No apology, no explanation, just distance. Later that afternoon, an internal memo went out announcing interim changes to approval processes, new controls, additional oversight, language about accountability and risk mitigation. Nothing in it mentioned my name. That was fine. The correction had been made, the record was clean, and the authority that had been used against me had been reduced to what it should have been all along, not personal, procedural. The final meeting was shorter than the first one that had started all of this. Patricia sat across from me. Folder closed this time. Sarah was there too, quiet but attentive. No one spoke until Patricia did. "We need to be clear," she said. "What happened to you was retaliation disguised as culture. That's not acceptable here." I nodded. I didn't feel the need to add anything. Patricia continued, her tone firm but measured. "Policies exist to prevent exactly this kind of misuse of authority. When someone bypasses them, it doesn't just harm an employee, it weakens the entire structure." Sarah glanced at me. "We're updating internal training to reflect that." "Good," I said, because silence was treated like cooperation. Patricia closed the folder. "Your role and standing are secure. If there are any further concerns, you come directly to us." "I will," I said. As we stood to leave, Sarah hesitated. "For what it's worth, you handled this professionally. I followed the rules," I replied. "That's all." Back at my desk, my inbox was quieter than it had been in weeks. No side comments, no carefully worded warnings, just work, returned to its proper shape. Ryan stopped by once more. Guess asking the question worked. He said, "It always does," I said. Eventually, that afternoon, I passed my former boss in the hallway. He stepped aside to let me through. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The power dynamic had already shifted, not through confrontation, but through record and process. I shut down my computer at the end of the day and stood for a moment before leaving, not to celebrate, to mark the boundary I had held. Rules are not weapons for those in power. They are safeguards for those willing to stand still long enough to use them. When someone punishes you for asking how the system works, it is not because you're wrong. It is because clarity threatens control. And patience, backed by truth, will always outlast fear.